Hi, welcome to Hamilton and Hazen, Behind the Mic. Join author M.L. Hamilton and me, I'm narrator Kelley Hazen, as we discuss our latest audiobook. Born from our 7 years of collaboration and more than 60 audiobooks we've produced together, listen to the ins, the outs, the ups, and the downs, the inside track you love to follow, Behind the Mic.
Welcome to Behind the Mic number 6 with Kelley Hazen and Michelle Hamilton. How are you?
Hello. Just a second. I gotta. There was a thing in front of my hello.
How are you doing?
Very well indeed. It's summer. It's we're not entirely maskless, but it's relaxed.
So confusing though. I never know. I carry one in my purse because I never know whether we're masking or not.
I still wear masks when I'm in stores. Yeah. With everything with the Delta variant and all that stuff. I mean, sadly, 358 people died in LA County from the Delta variant today or yesterday. And, so I'm with you. I'm keeping the mask, but it's at least nice to be able to walk the dog. And if somebody's coming toward me on the path, I'll veer out to the side, and come back to the path, but it's better than it was.
Yeah, it is. So we're here today to talk about Yetis in Whistler, the next in the Peyton book 10 in the Peyton Brooks FBI series.
Penultimate.
Penultimate. I love that word. That's such a great word. The penultimate
FBI
episode. Yeah. So I have a couple questions, and then you have a couple questions. So I'm gonna rock it right in here and start with my first question. So one of the things that without giving too much of Yetis away, the villain in this one is very charming, and he comes across as likable. So my general question is, it's a kind of a two-parter. It's how do you connect with the villains in any book that you narrate? So how do you connect with those villains? And then the second part, and before we do that, I want to preface this with something before we get there. But my books in particular, that you make them relatable and even likable. So to kind of back this train up, and then I'll ask the question again. I personally, I despise the villain who's just a villain for the sake of being a villain. I don't like those cartoon kind of villains. I like a villain that has a little bit of 3 dimension to them. I like a villain, whatever I watch or I read, I like a villain that has some reason for why they're a villain. I think of Thanos in the MCU. I don't know if you've watched the movies, but he has a reason for why he's so vile and so evil, and it's a compelling reason. You can almost in a twisted kind of sad way see where he's going with that. So he's a very 3-dimensional, very fleshed out villain, and I find that you are able to bring that to the villains that I have. But how do you, just in general, so we'll start with in general with any audiobook, how do you relate to the villain and kind of get in that headspace? Because it can be a dark headspace to get into. And then in my books particular, how do you make them charming and engaging?
So man, that's a great question. And it makes me think of so many things. First of all, people that are bad just for the sake of being bad, that's melodrama. Mm-hmm. I mean, in the acting world, right? That's snidely whiplash. And it is 2-dimensional, and that is why it's not compelling. And we all do bad things, right? I mean, and what happens is that we do bad things, and we don't think we're doing bad things because we have good reasons. We think we have good reasons to do them, right? And then there are psychopaths, right, who do violent things, who do things that clearly are bad things, not just mistakes, but they're bad things, you know, and but they still have reasons for what they do, you know, and flawed people are far more interesting to play than people who have no problems, you know, or people who are, I mean, I've always been drawn to darkness. My dad used to say, you like the underdog, don't you? and that's one way of saying it. I mean, these characters are clearly not just underdogs, but I mean, when I was in graduate school and I was acting, graduate school for acting, conservatory, whatever that MFA is all about. We did you know, and it's funny because you think of them sometimes, and acting games seem so inane, you know, improvs and stuff like that. I mean, sometimes I think about, I got a degree in that, you know, but at the same time, it's you know, it's trying to plumb the intuitive,
Yeah.
right? And make contact with the intuitive. They talk a lot about actors who are in their heads, and they can think their way through a part, but they can't feel their way through a part. And that's because for whatever reason in that moment or in their lives, they're not in touch with the intuitive. And we're supposed to act a color, you know, and it was like, and again, right, that sounds absurd, but and I just remember, you know, and sometimes we would play these games. There was another one where we had to act an animal, and the animal I did not do well, but the color I did gray. And the thing is that you couldn't, you know, you don't have a sign that says you're gray, and only if you're stupid do you wear gray, right? I mean, it's supposed to be more subtle than that, but man, I knew gray. I could feel it. I could intuit it. And I used Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells. I don't know if it's the theme music from The Omen.
Okay.
If you heard it, you would know it. And I wore I happened to have an all white sweatpants and hoodie. And there was, I think I just walked in and sat down and looked at each person, just looked them in the eyes and looked at them. And they knew immediately, the class knew immediately what the color was. And the only reason I tell that story is just that I've always had an affinity for the dark side. I've always had, you know, and part of what acting is examining why people do what they do, right? You know, I mean, I've lived a large part of my adult life spending a lot of time thinking about why people do what they do. And I can't explain it. You know, it could have something to do with my upbringing. It could have something to do with the horse I fell off of when I was 12. I mean, I don't know. But I have a strange affinity for the dark. So I like playing that. There's always something, and it actually, you know, I mean, obviously you and I talk about these behind the mics before we do them. And so this question has been percolating for a couple of days when you said, this is the question I want to ask you. And today I started recording the next World of Samar book, The Spirit of Eldon. And there is the Lord Rarick, who is the king of, is it Sarkissian? He's the king of Sarkissian. He has a chancellor, Marlis.
Yes.
And Marlis, not a great guy, right? And there was the way that you described his gestures. And I realized that, and so the key to Marlis is in his voice is very sweeping, just like his gestures. And he will be speaking, and then he will take, you know, and you know, did I put on my, medical suit and get my dissecting kit and try to figure that? No, it just comes. It's a very intuitive. And so that brings us to Yetis, and there was a way that you were describing, and it had a lot to do with his profession, which for me, it's funny you describe him as charming, and I'm glad he came off that way, because for me, I kept thinking about how beige those people are.
Yeah.
In the whole world of the experience, and I'm trying to avoid spoiler alerts here.
Yeah.
Yeah, being sort of vague. I realize I'm being vague. So everyone, I'm being vague. When you experience someone in his profession, it's a very beige role.
Right.
And so I just thought about that he would be beige, and that's where it started. And then
yeah, at the same time wanting to be going back to your color thing, he wants to touch the color, he wants to be the color, but he can't get there.
Right. And of course, there's always and again, it has to do with the spoiler alert, right? But you can't give away who's the bad guy.
No.
I can't, I can't, you can't, right? We have to, and you don't until you tell us, right? But you have to, don't you have to be careful in the writing not to give it away?
I do. Yeah.
And so I can't.
And I worried a little with this one, because Peyton's so persistent about this one character she cues in.
This is funny. This is so funny, because I think you're talking about the other one.
Oh, yeah.
Are you talking international killer or the American killer?
Oh, the international one.
I'm talking about the American killer.
Oh,
Is it
interesting?
That's great. No, and
yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I love it that we just did that.
Oh, how interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where they come from. And the international killer is Yetis was very interesting. I thought, when I was sort of looking back on it, it was this book feels more thoughtful in terms of not just grotesque, and not just in the killing, and not just self-motivated, although of course it is self-motivated, but the motivation for these people seemed to come from a more, almost like it festered.
Both. I think, yeah, they're both from a place of damage.
Yeah, like if something had gone a different way,
it wouldn't
would have happened.
Both, yeah.
Yeah. And so, and still marginally psychopathic, right? That still goes off the deep end, but but
yeah.
So does that answer your question?
Yes. Yes. So my next question is, we've talked a lot about comedic timing, and I'm always so impressed with your comedic timing and how you were able to land whatever silly, crazy thing that I've got. I think about the scene, and this is not giving anything away, of Marco and Abe at the mall when they're buying his suit for the debate. And they're having this discussion going down the escalator, and the couple's in front of them, and they're having this sort of not for polite company discussion about their situation. And it's just funny as hell, that timing of and when the couple turns around and kind of looks at them like, what is going on. And so I've always been impressed with your ability to land those so well. It's exactly the way that I imagine it in my head when I'm writing it, that how this is going to play out, and then you nail it, and it comes out so funny. Or the random silly things that Jake says, the part there where Devin and Marco are arguing, and Jake says, something about wanting warn me next time so I can get some popcorn. Those you just, and it was such a tense scene. It's such a really intense scene between Marco and Devin. Then you got Jake there inserting that comedic level, levity right at that moment to break that tension. And you nailed it. You nailed that so well with him, and you let it kind of sit, you let it kind of marinate with the tension. And then you came in with Jake's little quip there. But there's also timing to the emotional scenes. There were a couple of them in this book, I think, where somebody's revealing something and it's touching, or chilling. There's one in particular with the villain in the international case where his response is so just, I got chills. The way that you timed it and the way you there was a pause there and working that silence. That's a hard thing to do because humans don't like silence. We want to fill all the silences. And I know I've said that before, but how do you know even that emotional timing? How can you hit those where it just, you let something kind of resonate, you let something kind of sit and not want to fill that, not want to, jump in and say the next word, because those are the moments I think where it transcends into art to me.
Well, that's a lovely thing to say, and I thank you for that. It's again, it makes me think of several things. Actors love to take pauses, and they take so many pauses, and they'll even in a sentence take a pause, like I just did, right? Or and it's just they don't a lot, and you'll see it a lot, particularly in American television. Actors don't talk like people talk. They talk like actors. That's why, like in commercials, and when they have the dramatization disclaimer in the corner, these actors' dramatizations are not the portrayals of real people. It's like, you didn't have to tell me that. You can tell they're not real people. And it's really, or they're not people relating a real story. Let's put it that way, because of course they're real people. But Paul Newman, who I really like a lot, and he was a really pretty face,
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to watch his career. If you go back and watch his movies over time, he became a better and better and better and better actor. And he was a great actor to start with. But and it's stuck with me. If you're taking pauses all the time, they have no meaning. When you need it for that one that's really essential. And so I've always remembered that, because it is the truth, and the people that are the most compelling, the people that you listen to, are not the people that are shouting.
Mm-hmm.
It's when people stop talking that you like put down your phone and look up, oh, what did I miss? What did I happen? Right.
Yeah.
And it's people who start to speak very quietly that draw you in, and the same thing is true with the pauses. I think the reason that I get you is, the more I get to know you, the more I realize that we come from very similar backgrounds, very similar experiences, probably very similar socioeconomic, similar education levels, similar white privilege, things we did as kids, the lessons we had as kids. And so I think we grew up with a lot of the same rhythms. We probably watched a lot of the same television shows, and so the comedy that we heard and stuff like that, it's probably very similar. So when I read you and your tempo, I mean, I think I've said this on Behind the Mic before, a lot of narrating an author is understanding their tempo and like how many words they use in a sentence. So I know how much to breathe to get a sentence out, and have it make sense, not break it in a stupid place so that the thought is
Mm-hmm.
across. And so I think you and I think we come from a similar tempo, a history of tempo that's similar. That and oh my God, do I get your sense of humor? I mean, that's it as much as anything. I mean, I sometimes have to stop recording so I can laugh and then go back and record it. And I've actually started to let enter into my recording the narrator's amusement with the writing.
I can hear
And
it.
yeah, and I think some people would argue with that. I think some producers and publishers and directors would argue with that. But since I'm the producer and the director and you're the publisher, and I mean, I trust that if I do something, you'll go, hey, you know what? I didn't get that. I didn't like that. I think it brought us out of the story, that you'll tell me. But I think it's a nice added, and it's been commented on in reviews that our fans enjoy. It makes them feel more of a part of the actual recording experience. So they're not just in the story, they're in the audiobook with you and I, the writer and the
Right.
and I think that's a special thing we provide. And if other teams are doing it too, then I think it's a good move. That being said, I've done my own, not only with my audiobooks, but on stage, and film. I've done editing and I've done directing on stage. And and so I have a sense of the whole picture. And that, I think, is what allows me to find that timing, that zing, that moment. I mean, I hear that scene from the beginning to the end. It's like conducting an orchestra, I would guess, that I've never done. Right. But if you think of conducting actors on stage, and if you think of voices as instruments, and then I have the luxury of playing all the instruments when I narrate an audiobook, all the characters and the narrator, I'm them, right? It allows me to thread that and make that music of that scene exactly the way I want it to be. And it's that experience as a director. And also I played the piano for 11 years, which music, I mean, it's very musical. It's very, I had a wonderful classical music education, and I sang vocal music for decades. And so I was exposed to that, melody, harmony, counterpoint, all that rich texture that's there if you know how to hear it and you know how to layer it and create it. So that's why I think you enjoy, those are all the reasons that I think you enjoy the timing.
That kind of made me think of something somebody said to me the other day, which I'm not certain I fully comprehend the comment, but the comment was, to me, was that I write cinematically, like that it unfolds like a movie. And it was kind of a criticism, that it's not like a normal novel. It unfolds like a movie. And I got to thinking about it. I was like, well, what does other people, it was kind of like one of those moments where I'm just like, but how does somebody else write? Because that's how I always am seeing it. But it kind of brought that back when you were talking there about our shared background and maybe seeing the same kinds of TV and stuff like that, and the time period that we come from. Maybe that's part of what they were talking about, is that is infused into, and your background as an actress, as an actor, it's infused. Maybe that's part of too why you connect so well, is that if I do write cinematically, which I'm not really sure I understand what's the opposite of not writing cinematically. Maybe that's why we also mesh, is there's that element that I'm writing, I'm speaking your language. I don't know, because it was an interesting comment, and it gave me some pause, and I had to think about it, because I was thinking, well, what does that mean, as opposed, if you're not writing cinematically, what are you writing as? And I haven't come up with the answer to that yet, but what do you think about, I don't know, kind of what do you think about that idea?
Well, Bruce, my husband, who does all the production, he engineers all and produces the audiobooks and writes the music when we use music and does the special effects when we do the special effects. Just to remind our listening audience who Bruce is, Bruce Carver, he said to me just the other day again, because we were working on Yetis, that he thinks that Peyton would be an incredible television show. And I agree completely. And you have told me that there has been interest. And so as a confirmation that you write cinematically, I think that's true. Whether or not you write cinematically, I mean, and this is my response to that comment, seems more about the way the person who's reading it or listening to it takes it in.
Right.
Whether they listen or read cinematically. Do they read and see pictures in their imagination? I can only think that if someone's telling you that you're cinematic, it's because you create complete pictures. I don't know that there's an antithesis to that. I mean, I can think of a lot of authors, and I can't name one off the top of my head, but that are very cerebral and cause me to sort of consider a phrase or the way a group of words, well, let's consider a phrase, but or a thought or an impact of a statement or an event, and there are those, that's the only thing, that's another approach to writing I can think of, and I'm sure if I thought of it longer. But
just when you bring that up, I just finished Richard Wright's, it was a novel that was published posthumously by his daughters, called The Man Who Lived Underground. And there are times in that novel where he pulls you out of the story. You're no longer immersed in the story, and he's giving you this beautiful sentence that you have to ponder, and there's a weight to the sentence in there, but it's not part of the story. I mean, it's almost like a narrator kind of speak to you in a way without actually doing that. But I mean, it's where it's a sentence where you have to read it a couple times to fully grasp all the nuance of that sentence. So I understand what you're saying by that.
Ann Patchett and John Irving are two writers that it's kind of, and I just immediately thought of the story of Playing the Color Gray. They will sometimes touch a tone or very often an experience in one of their books, and it's just like, it goes right up under my ribs. I mean, it's so close to my own human experience, to my own life experience, that it shakes me to my core. And it's not usually the point of the book, it's not the climax of the plot. It's something much more internal with one of the characters. Although I will say that when I read the last sentence in A Widow for 1 Year, John Irving, it was like I couldn't speak for several moments. I mean, so there is that kind of emotional impact.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I wouldn't think that writing cinematically, I can't imagine that was meant as a criticism.
Yeah. Anyway.
I wouldn't take it as one.
Yeah.
Let me ask you.
Okay.
I think I mentioned that I've started recording The Spirit of Eldon, which is book 4 in the World of Samar series. And I got to start that right after I took a few days off after Yetis in Whistler and started that. And it was such a pleasure to get to continue with your work. I mean, often, it's like I'll do one of your books and then I have a short list of clients that I work with, of other authors that I record for. And I'll do, a book by Anne Jeffries, and then I'll do a book by Jessica Tillis, or, and then come back to you when you're ready with the next book, when you want to move forward. And the upside this time was that we went straight to The Spirit of Eldon right after Yetis. And the thought crossed my mind, it's twofold for you in your writing. First of all, and it may be the second, should I do what you do? Should I ask both questions and then you get to pick which one you want to answer? How do you leave one series? How do you leave Peyton and move to Zion Sawyer, or move to Avery's finished, of course, but we still have the third book in Moonwalker to work on. And you did 2 of those back to back. Or no, you didn't, because Moon Thief was way done, and then you just did Moonwalker, and we have yet to embark on Moon Mage. How do you move around? I mean, do you do that just because your fan base compels you, or do you prefer to jump around? I mean, the luxury, when we first started recording, we did the first 7
Mhm.
of Peyton in a row, and we didn't record them in a row. I mean, I did do some other stuff, but mostly, I mean, there was a period of time where we were doing one book right after another, and I wondered, from your perspective, how does that feel for you?
So when I first started writing, it was very much deliberate. It was a deliberate choice to jump around. I have stories all the time going through my head, and so it was something that, I finished this one, I'm going to take a break here, I'm going to go in this other way, and it's almost was a honing my talent kind of thing, because as you mentioned earlier when we were talking a little bit before we came on, the writing for Samar is very different from the writing for Peyton, and the writing for Zion is very different from the writing for Peyton. And so for me, it was more of a kind of honing my talents and being able to kind of shift and learn how to do that. And also for Peyton can take me to some pretty dark places. So I needed a break from the violence. And so that's where I would jump to something else where I could do with Zion, where it's a lot lighter, it's a lot more, silly and not as intense. And Peyton requires just an unbelievable amount of research. I'm constantly, one scene in Peyton can take me sometimes an hour, just because I'm researching. I've got 50 windows open and I'm researching, and that is wonderful. I love doing the research, but at the same time, it kind of breaks up the flow of your writing. So it's fun to kind of take a break and just write something that I can just write without having to do that kind of intense research with it. So at first it was those things. It was to hone my own writing ability by forcing myself into different, I always try, like with Peyton, I've always tried to do different types of writing. This time it was the present tense, which, I wasn't sure. It was an experiment. I wasn't sure how that was going to play. But I want to try and do different types of writing. So I kind of force myself to do things, see if I can do them, if they work. So it was that, but then it was also just to take a break from the intensity of Peyton and the research and the darkness, and give myself a chance to kind of pull out of that world. Now, because there is a following, a lot of it is guided by, okay, well, you gave them a Peyton, now I want a Zion, it's a lot of negotiating going on there now. So a lot of it is guided by what people have asked for now. Not all of it, certainly not all of it. We all know that I took a year off to just do what I wanted to do with the year of discovery. So, I'm willing to give people what they want to an extent. But so that's part of it. But what I've come to do, the audiobooks have been just phenomenal for me. It used to be I would have to go back and I'd have to read the previous book to get back into that world, to get that feeling back again, which is time consumptive. And so now with the audiobooks, I can listen to audiobooks when I take the dog for a walk, when I'm doing the dishes, and I can get back in the world quicker. And so the audiobooks have been a huge benefit to me as far as jumping worlds back and forth. So it's really, really helped me with keeping within that self-contained universe.
Mm-hmm. How did it feel to get back to Peyton? I mean, I know it wasn't so long between Goblins and Yetis, but it was a long time. between Frankenstein and goblins. And when you finally sat down again to start writing Peyton, was it good to be back? Was there, or was it just enough?
The thing about Peyton is that whole world is so second nature now. You know, we've done there's 18 books in that whole series, between the two series. And Peyton is just like putting on, you know, your old bathrobe. It's so easy to slip back in there and to pick up those voices and to pick up her. I've always said she's my alter ego. She talks in my head all the time, you know. So that's just, it's like butter, you know. It's just, you just slide right back into it again. It's remembering, because Peyton is so complex, and the dual cases between her and Marco can be so complex, and they each, I mean, Marco's case is ended, but they each have these ongoing cases that have carried throughout the whole series. That's where I have to take, and I take copious notes between the books, because I've got to go back and review all of that and make sure I know where I'm going and what's supposed to happen with the next one. So that does take some review.
That actually brings me to my my next question, which is, and it was funny because someone asked me, one of the fans asked me, "Is this the last Peyton?" I was like, "Oh no, there's several more." And then it came up in a conversation between you and I that YETIS in Whistler is actually the second to last in the FBI. And I was like, oh my God, it's the second to last. It's the penultimate. And that got me wondering, I know in conversations that we've had, you've always told me that you plot out your series. It's not a big surprise, but how do you do that? How do you do that? How do you know when you're plotting out the series or whatever that, oh, okay, well, this will be the second to last one? I mean, is it back? Do you know that because do you know that because you're already at the end, or did you know, and this one will be the second to the last, and that, was this forethought or was it afterthought? How do you plan out your series?
They're all forethought. They're all planned out ahead of time. I teach the journalism class, and I do it with one of the other classes there. And the advisor for that other class, he talks about the backwards planning. He said, let's backwards plan this. And so we always start with what's our publication date? What date do we want to publish this? And then we plan backwards from there of how we're going to get to producing our magazine. And it's the same way with the series. Is I always, where do I want to end? And that's the first thing. And I think that's a rookie author mistake, is not knowing where you're ending. And I've always been very aware of I have to know where I'm ending, and then I go backwards from there. So if I know where I end, how do I get to that end? And then I can plot it out. And all of these books, I knew exactly, like the cliffhanger at the end of Frankenstein, that was planned. I knew that book was going to end in that cliffhanger, and I knew that there was going to be this disconcerting thing for the readers, that they weren't going to know what happened. But that had been planned. That was all by design. And so for me, it's always just backwards plan. If here's the scope, I know where I'm ending. Now, how do I go backwards? Now, I will say for FBI, the only changes, I brought in Menehune. That was not a planned novel, but I felt like their marriage had to have some bigger
event
associated with it. Yeah, because people were so invested in the two of them that deserved more than what I had originally planned for it. I mean, I think I underestimated that part of it. I didn't think about how invested people would become in them as a couple. So
when you did Peyton Brooks Mysteries, you already had planned out Peyton Brooks FBI. I mean, did you know that jump, or
no, what? So I knew that I wanted her to go to the FBI. I knew I wanted to get her out, and I knew I wanted her to go to all of the places that I have personally been to. So with the exception of Menehune, I've been to every one of those places. And so I knew that that's what I wanted. So once I finished the original mysteries and I was moving her to the FBI, that's when I sat down and I plotted out the entire series.
The entire second series.
The second series, the FBI. But I also did that with the first. I knew exactly how many books. The only deviation from the original plan with the second books, with the first set of books, with the mysteries, was I brought in the prequel, Painted Lady.
Painted Lady, yeah. I remember.
Really, to be honest with you, you could get rid of Painted Lady and not read Painted Lady if you wanted to, and you'd still have the full, complete scope of what happens.
When did you add Painted Lady? Were you finished with Treasure Island and then you thought, hey, let's go back and do Painted Lady? Because it was an issue. Was it an issue with the way Potrero Hill was received?
Part of it was an issue with the way Potrero Hill was received. People got very attached to Jake, and they were very angry at Peyton and Marco for going after him. So people, which I didn't anticipate. Their obsession with Jake and Abe has surprised me. How much people, I got a review on Yetis already, and it was like, I wanted more Jake and Abe time. And so that took me by surprise. I was really surprised at how much people became invested in Jake. And so Potrero Hill is by far it's got a lot of overwhelmingly positive reviews, but there are those diehard people who are really angry about the way that Jake was treated. But so when I went back, what I wanted something that was short and could just be kind of the lead in to that series, like get you into the world. And kind of introduce you to who Marco and Peyton are and kind of give you some background of where they're coming from. And it just felt like it just needed that kind of punch, that little bit of a entry, into that series.
And it's one of my favorite covers.
Yeah.
It's a really great cover.
Yeah. Well, that area of San Francisco Postcard Row is just so iconic. Perfect one for that.
Oh yeah. When do you think we'll see Pirates in Las Vegas?
So I just started Zion today. So the next Zion is starting. And then I'd like to finish off the Moon Mage and get that series completed. And then we'll see Pirates in Las Vegas. So probably close to the beginning of the new year. We'll come back around to Peyton again.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so exciting. Do you think it will truly be the last Peyton? Can I ask that question?
I haven't decided. I'm very mindful of not wanting to wear out my welcome where Peyton is concerned. I do feel like that knowing when to end and end gracefully and dignified is something it's hard. It's hard to judge that. I had kind of played with the idea of Pirates being the very end of the series, of all Peyton. And then the response to Yetis was just overwhelming. I mean, the pre-sales, I've never had a pre-sale like this before. And already, there's 8 reviews on the book. So I'm kind of thinking maybe I don't know. I'm kind of playing with it and kind of waiting to see how things fall out with Pirates, and then make a decision. I do have an idea to go forward with her in the hate crimes division. And I think that would be it would allow me to explore some cases that I think would be fascinating. Mm-hmm. But again, I want to be very mindful of not, of making sure that there's a graceful culmination. That's probably going to be very much guided by our fans.
It's exciting. And maybe with Pirates in Las Vegas, we'll actually get the audiobook out at the same time as the paperback and the ebook.
Right.
How the production is finally, which is nothing we can control, but
But I do want, just for our Peyton fans, there is plans for, which you know about this already, there is plans for a spinoff, a Harper and Dante spinoff, which I think would just be a kick. The two of them together as a.
I agree. Oil and water.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah.
Harper, I think I said this in one of my tweets. Harper is fast becoming one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, mine too. She's so fun to write.
Yeah. So I'll be interested in what you decide to do with that.
I love to me, this one, there was some growth for Dante. He wasn't in it a whole lot, but there was a little bit more of his personality came out a little bit more with Marco. There was some moments between the two of them where he kind of showed his own personality, and I'm kind of excited to kind of explore that and see him kind of come out of his shell a little bit and become more of a I mean, we know he's brilliant and he's just a good guy, but it was kind of fun to see him be a little bit, there was a couple snarky moments that he had, and it was kind of fun to play around with that, just see where
his confidence and his power and his possession of his brilliance.
Yeah. But,
sounds great.
Well, is there anything else that so when do we think we'll have Spirit? So that's
Spirit's gonna take about 3 weeks to record, I think, right around probably somewhere between, and so probably 3 to 4 weeks. So I would say that we will see it out mid-August, early to mid-August.
Can I just say, part of us getting going on Spirit is because one of our fans contacted us and said, she really, she was miffed. She said that it wasn't out. So it does work.
Yeah.
You contact us. We try. We aim to please.
It's true. It's true.
But I was delighted to see that there was people that were wanting that because that was a whole new adventure for us to branch into. So it was pretty exciting to see that people were wanting that one too.
Yeah, it's I think it seems like a formula for success. I mean, we were able to focus on those first 3 books on World of Samar, and hopefully we'll be able to be closer together on the Sanctuary of Eldon and the continuing Eldon series, not so much time in between, and get it out, because it's so sweeping. Yeah. And it's so exciting that you really want to get on to the next, and it's so dense, i.e. sweeping, it's to hold on to all that information and all those worlds and all those ideas while you wait for the next book. And I mean, the great thing about Eldon is that if you're desperate to get to the next book, you can read it, right? Listen, if you want to go on, you can read it, but keep
all right.
So yeah, hopefully we'll get Spirit out in early to mid-August, and then just every couple of months we'll be able to add the next one until we're through that whole 11 book series. Very exciting.
Yeah.
It's good to be back. It's good to be back in the world of some.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. We
Pleasure.
will be back then with the 7th behind the mic with the Spirit of Eldon.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for Hamilton and Hazen Behind the Mic. Visit authormlhamilton.net and kellyhazennarrates.com to join our newsletters for more insider news and views. Today's episode is sponsored by Phoenix Publication Services. PPS, Digital Shepherds. Let us ignite your writing goals.